Question on the floor?
Yeah, I want to go back to the one that you had up before.
Sure.
So in terms of what I think about race-based data collection and its ability to address unfair practices and racial disparities, I think that there are in theory, there are instances where it can be helpful, but I do not believe that the Toronto Police are among the groups that could at this time benefit from collecting this kind of information. And the reason I say that is because you guys are not being honest with us about the context of this conversation. My friend in the middle, I'm sorry because I didn't hear your name at the outset.
My fan.
My fan?
Yes.
My fan, you've been kind of pointing at this the entire time, but never saying it. You've said that we want to see if there are racial disparities in the way that the police are conducting themselves.
Yes, there are.
You have said that we know that there's a history of racism in North America. Why can't we just talk about why we're here? Why can't we talk about why so many of the people in this room are black? Because there's an Indigenous task force, which I support, but we're skating around the main issue. The main issue is that almost 40 years ago in 1980, like our friend said, the police were disproportionately stopping, chasing, arresting, beating, and killing black people. And that it has never stopped to this day that we're standing here talking to you. So it is insulting when you say that we have to start somewhere. You might have to start somewhere, but we're dying. So this is not a theoretical conversation about whether or not bias exists. You're killing us. I want to say that before this room empties. So I don't actually believe in this any more than I believe in body cameras, which have been talked about, because you guys did a pilot project and you wasted our money. The police decide when to turn on and off the body camera that is, again, meant to be for their own holding accountability. What you fail to acknowledge is that this is all being done because of lack of police accountability and a complete absence of police accountability. That's what's happening here. But I really have to talk about street checks, or as we say, carding, in the context of this, because the deputy chief said, this is the first time, again, that we're collecting this data, and you said that all of the data that you collect now will be kept separate from other kinds of data that you collect. So I would like you to actually help us understand. Carding is race-based data, or if you want to call it street checks, whatever terminology you would like to use. You acknowledge that you have been collecting data which tells you the race of the individuals that you are interacting with already for many years, and it has been the subject of an entire nationwide conversation. You acknowledge that, right? Is that not the case?
Yes.
I'll answer when you're finished.
Okay, so I'm seeing nodding.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the answer is yes. However, you don't contextualize this entire exercise by saying that. That's a very insulting thing to do. But what I want to know is, because you said that that data would be kept separate from all other data that you collect, do you not still have all of the data from police carding over the years, from so-called street checks? Do you not have it? Why would you engage in an exercise when you have you said the sample that we're dealing with in the City of Toronto, Deputy Chief, is in the millions. You've collected millions of contact cards on your own civilians in the City of Toronto, and they indicate race. Why do you not analyze those? Why do you not listen to the community who has anecdotally been for years telling you the context of those millions of police stops? Why would you engage in this when you have all that information? Or are you going to tell us that you don't any longer have that information? Because again, I guess a specific question that I want answered is, if somebody stops me when I leave here now, and they say, Desmond, give us your ID, and they look up my name, will they not be able to see all of that historical data that has been collected about me already? So before we start talking about new data that you want to collect on black people, let's talk about the data you already have. Can the police still access street checks data, historical street checks data, when they stop me out on the street, yes or no?
Thank you. And who'd like to go first from the panel?
Well, Mr. Cole, I appreciate your comments. We cannot use those data. We were told not to use those data.
I'm asking if you still have access to it as police.
I'm telling you, we cannot use those data to do any analyses.
Does that mean you don't have access to it?
So I wanted to answer a couple of questions that you raised.
Actually, I can answer that question
Okay,
that
thank you.
Desmond asked.
Okay, thank you.
So what my understanding is that because there are a number of human rights claims that are in the work, there's Superior Court actions, and there's a class action lawsuit by the Black Action Defense Committee, of which I'm counsel for the Black Action Defense Committee. The data has been kept. So at the last Police Services Board meeting, there was a memo released by the Police Services Board that the data will be held until after the litigation of all those cases have been completed and courts rule on the uses of that data. Now, whether or not Toronto Police access it for other purposes,
Ask him.
I don't know.
Ask him. I just tried and it didn't work. You ask him again.
Yeah.
No, but I
we're
have,
trying
I
to
have
say
the
no.
memo, so I'm just answering from that. I'm just responding from that perspective.
Our answer is
all I
no,
can-
and our answer is no, we cannot access those data. That's my answer to you.
So if I get stopped out on the street and they
You will
look
not
me
get
up,
stopped on the street unless we follow the legislation of the government on street checks. You will not be arbitrarily stopped.
oh,
on the street.
well, no one believes that. But anyway,
Well, that's what
like,
I'm telling you.
I know.
Okay?
You've been telling us that for years, but I just want to make sure I understand again that if I get stopped, there is a whole set of historical data that has already been collected, not just on me, but on other people in this room and on black people across the city and other racialized people. I'm just making sure that you're telling me today that
We
if
cannot
I'm,
access those data.
you cannot.
We cannot.
You have no physical ability to do so, is what you're saying.
No, sir.
Okay. I just want to say then that when it comes to the data that you want to collect now and this practice, I think it is fascinating that we're talking about a world where one day the person who's being arrested will be able to identify things like self-identify, right? Like their own race. So after the police officer throws me to the ground and puts my face into the concrete, then he's going to ask me to self-identify, right? That's what's going to happen, right? Come on, guys. What world are you talking about here? This is foolishness. Like, it's all well and good. And I understand the reason why police should be the ones. The great thing about the carding information that you already have is that it was the police who decided what race they thought that the person was. So I actually technically understand the importance of that. That's not my issue. Okay? My issue is that you have all of this history of what you've already done, and you come to the community saying it's time to turn a new page and start something different, and you don't acknowledge any of that. Like, how can you actually expect people to work with you? I personally can never work with you. I'll speak for myself. I didn't come here because I want to learn how to work together with police. I don't believe anybody in our society has the license to kill authority that the police are given by law. I just don't believe in it. And we see how deadly it is for our community, in particular as black people. So I'm never going to give that authority to you and believe that one day you're going to use it correctly. But I just want to caution everybody when it comes to collecting new data and the police talking about how it's going to be used properly. All that data needs to actually be taken out of the police's hands that you've already collected. If you want to talk about building trust, whenever you approach somebody on the street, you were supposed to give rights notification. I have never met one person in the 2.5, almost 3 years now, since the police were supposed to give rights notification, i.e., you have the right not to engage in this conversation with me. I have never once heard of somebody having an interaction like that with the police since you implemented your new policy. I have never once seen a receipt for information taken from a person, which is also under your new policy. Talking about a lot of things in the future, but you don't even adhere to the policies that you have now. So no, I personally cannot have faith in you, and I would caution other people at this meeting. As much as some of these technical issues about collecting race-based data are important to our communities, and as much as sometimes it could be helpful, that we cannot actually move forward with a group of people who aren't even going to willingly acknowledge what they've been doing.
So thank you for your passion in this conversation. It's to be expected because there have been real profound impacts for Black communities in interactions with police. So there's definitely space, room, and time to bring passion to this conversation. And this is, for us as an institution, an opportunity to do things in the way that is most appropriate moving forward. Will it be perfect? No. Has there been harm done? Yes. Has there been harm done today and last night? Yes. And so this is going to be a work in progress. There are going to be some community members who will never buy in, and so be it. Yet we are still going to have to do this work. So as an institution, as an organization, we're talking about structural change, policy change, we're talking about cultural change. And we all know that institutional change is slow, painfully slow and incremental.
Doesn't have to be.
That's typically what it is, because it takes time when you have over 7,000 employees all engaged in a practice and bringing their culture. And so I appreciate the passion. I have some of that too. This is big work. It's difficult work. This topic is really, really difficult and painful and fraught. So I just want to acknowledge, because I don't want you to feel like we're cutting you off or moving on from you. The passion is necessary and it's real. But as an institution, we are moving forward in a conversation where we are looking to diligently engage community. Accountability is important, so the feedback, no matter how negative and painful and loud, is real and necessary. And so we are going to continue to do what we can in the best way that we can in partnership with community for those who are ready, willing, and able to engage. And not everyone will be part of that conversation, and so be it, and we can appreciate that.
I would recommend that if you want to do that, you can do things like use active voice. So have people been harmed is a passive voice. The police have harmed us.
Okay.
I'm telling you what I'm hearing, that's all. I'm just telling you what I'm
I hear
hearing.
you, but even when I said that, have they been harmed today or yesterday, is still speaking about present moment.
Last week.
So I can appreciate, but I don't want us to fall into, through passion, getting into semantics.
You keep saying passion.
Because I'm
think
hearing you were passionate.
I'm pissed. If you want to say it like that, then that's more accurate, because I'm angry. I'm not passionate. I'm angry because we're dying. But anyway.
I appreciate that. And this particular conversation is about how we're going to be able to move forward. And so, like I said,
destroy all the data that you've already collected and acknowledge the crimes that the police have committed. That would be a start. Like, there's no reconciliation without truth. There's no moving forward until you tell the truth. I can name the people who the police have killed. You guys don't say our names. You don't talk about the communities. You say, oh, we want to see if we're, if we're doing things, over-policing in certain communities. We can tell you the communities. We're sitting in one. We're sitting in one of the communities that you have over-policed, and you want to act as though you need to look at some statistics to see whether or not you did it and whether or not there are tweaks, and not acknowledging that all of that is done on purpose. Like, all of it is done with a justification, which is anti-Black racism. That's why you're here and not in another community tonight, because of anti-Black racism, y'all. Mm-hmm. So I'm sorry, just like as one Black person to another, I just like, that's what hurts. Yeah. That's what hurts. Yeah. It's the lack of honesty in this conversation.
And I won't quote, I'm not going to code over it. I think you really raise a valid point. If we're looking at reconciliation and the acknowledgement of harm, we really do need to frame this conversation in a more authentic way. So, point taken. in terms of how we're having this conversation. I know that we're cutting to the chase in a way that negates or at least skips over the experience of our communities. So, point taken. In the absence of being authentic in terms of the ways in which we've been working and harming community. I hear you. So, with that,